job in this lecture is to make sense of how we regulate then all of the activities of the male reproductive system. So we're going to start early and end late. Let's see what happens. So gonadotropin releasing hormone, or GnRH, is a hormone that is produced at the hypothalamus, and it is triggered as a young person moves, as a young boy moves into puberty. So this is the hormone that will trigger puberty occurring. And so in response to gonadotropin releasing hormone being let go from the hypothalamus, we see the pituitary gland beginning to secrete what are referred to as the gonadotropins. So gonadotropins are hormones that have their activity at the gonads. So luteinizing hormone is produced by the anterior pituitary gland, and follicle stimulating hormone is also produced there. And they will both have their activity at the testis in the male reproductive system. Luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone, I'm not going to explain why they have those names yet. We're going to hold off until we get to the female reproductive system because they're named for their activity there. But we'll see when we kind of circle around in that lecture, we'll see that they have very similar types of activities in both the male and the female reproductive systems. So luteinizing hormone then is released to the pituitary gland, and it works on those interstitial cells, the cells that are packed between the seminiferous tubules within the lobules of the testis, and it causes them to produce a number of androgens. Andro means man, gens, so that's the man creating or the man beginning hormones. So testosterone is just one of these androgens, so there are multiple versions of testosterone that are made. So often in males, not often, but in males, this luteinizing hormone may also be referred to as interstitial cell stimulating hormone because it causes the interstitial cells to make testosterone. All right, so gonadotropin releasing hormone causes the release of the gonadotropins from the pituitary gland. Luteinizing hormone is the first of those gonadotropins, and it causes testosterone to be produced at the testis. We'll look in a minute and find out what the activities of testosterone is. Follicle stimulating hormone, the other gonadotropin released by the pituitary gland, targets the sustentacular cells in the seminiferous tubules, and it causes them to grow and mature and to respond to the testosterone that's being made by the interstitial cells. And so in response to all of this follicle stimulating hormone and testosterone interactions there with the sustentacular cells, what we see is that spermatogenesis, the process of making sperm, will be enhanced. It occurs as a result of that. So follicle stimulating hormone results in spermatogenesis, while luteinizing hormone results in the release of testosterone. Inhibin is a third hormone that's involved here. Inhibin is produced by sustentacular cells. So as FSH gets the sustentacular cells all going, then inhibin begins to be produced. And as inhibin increases in concentration in body fluids, then it feeds back at the pituitary gland and it slows down the secretion of FSH. So inhibin and FSH work together in negative feedback to balance out each other's release. So we moderate FSH production in response to inhibin. So we got negative feedback going on, and this keeps FSH going in homeostasis like it should. All right, so there we are. We got 4 hormones out of the way. And recall, we're going to see these hormones again in the next chapter as we take on chapter 13, the last chapter for this class. Woohoo! All right, testosterone. This is the most important of the male sex hormones, the androgens. And as we've already said, it's produced by the interstitial cells of the testes. But we have a secondary source in our bodies, which is the adrenal cortex. So it's the outer rind of the adrenal gland. And so this means that not only do men have a secondary source of testosterone, women also have a source of testosterone in their bodies because they produce testosterone there at their adrenal cortex as well. The target cells for testosterone are found throughout the body. And the production of testosterone and other androgens begins during fetal development. And so when the baby is born, it's happening full bore. This is why babies can be born with fetal acne, with pustules on their face, is because they're having the same types of levels of hormones in their blood as are seen in an adolescent youth who is also suffering from acne. So it begins during fetal development, and that's what produces all the primary sex characteristics that we associate with maleness, is all of this testosterone that's being produced in the fetus. And so as a result of that, this little nub of erectile tissue develops into the penis. We see the testis develop rather than the ovaries, and the testis get pulled into the scrotum. We see the scrotum. So all of the things that the anatomical features that a male is born with that say you are male are all developed during puberty, or not during puberty, during fetal development in response to these androgens being produced. So shortly after the child is born, it stops producing androgens, he stops producing androgens, and it doesn't kick up again until somewhere around age 13 when the child goes through puberty, and puberty will last through approximately age 19 when it could be a little bit longer for some men as their big adolescent growth spurt ends. And it's with puberty then that we see the secondary sex characteristics. So testosterone, in order for it to stimulate any of the cells of the prostate gland or the seminal vesicles or the external sexual organs, has to be converted into a form called dihydrotestosterone. So even testosterone itself has to be modified further before it will be active. And we do this modification in the liver, or if we produce excess of it, then we clear it at the liver. So we modify it at the liver, and then it gets converted into the bile salts, and it'll be secreted through or excreted through bile or through the urine. So what are the actions of testosterone? So we see all the development of the primary sex characteristics that we've already talked about during fetal development. And then at puberty, it causes, as testosterone increases again in the body, it stimulates spermatogenesis, promotes sperm maturation, it causes the growth of the testis and maintains them as good sperm producing factories for the life of the male. It establishes what we think of as the secondary sex characteristics that include body hair, increased muscle mass and body size, especially in relation to females, enlargement of the larynx that causes the deeper voice of a male versus a female. So that's because the vocal folds in the larynx are longer, and so when they vibrate, they produce lower frequency sounds. The thickening and strengthening of the bones, as well as the broad shoulders and the narrow hips and waist that are associated with men's body form. And it acts as sort of a general stimulant to metabolism throughout the body. We also have seen, we talked about how testosterone is a little bit more of puts the gas pedal to red blood cell production because of EPO, the stimulation provided by EPO. So increased testosterone equals increased EPO production, which equals increased red blood cell production. And then all of the behaviors and drives associated with male sexuality. So that sexual drive and the related behaviors of courtship and everything associated with mating itself are all triggered and stimulated by testosterone. So testosterone clearly is a very important hormone, and to maintain it in homeostasis, we see a negative feedback loop that works on it. So as we produce testosterone. The response of the hypothalamus is a reduction in gonadotropin-releasing hormone. So as GnRH increases, LH secretion will decrease, and testosterone production then will be decreased at the interstitial cells. So more testosterone equals less GnRH, which equals less LH, which equals then less testosterone. If testosterone levels are decreasing, then the hypothalamus is released from the inhibition that it was under. GnRH increases, which then increases LH production, and then we see testosterone production increase there at the interstitial cells. So it's negative feedback with GnRH that through the hormone LH will mediate levels of testosterone. Okay, so you may want to draw a picture of this to help make sense of it. There's good pictures in the book too. Use those pictures, draw them, kind of show the cycle of negative feedback that as we see here are testosterone levels, and this is time, so testosterone goes up. We see GnRH levels, and I'll do them as a dashed line. As testosterone increases, GnRH is decreasing, so then we see a similar curve happening with LH, where it decreases. As LH decreases, so does testosterone, which then leads to increase in GnRH, which leads to an increase in LH, which then leads to an increase in testosterone again. So hopefully spend some time working on that and get that clear in your mind so that you can make good sense of that. And maybe one thing that you could do is produce this kind of a graph, draw that like first thing when you get the exam so that you can keep in mind the relationship between testosterone, GnRH, and LH.